Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll start. It's time. Let people join in as and when they come in. But before I begin, I just want to ask you guys: have you been able to go through um, uh, the week two contents?
No, ma'am.
No.
No, ma'am.
Are you
No.
still at week one?
I have completed week
Yes.
1, ma'am, but I haven't gone through week 2.
Oh, you're going for week two. Okay, so anything actually I plan to start off with the week two content today because I think it was released on Friday. But if you haven't watched the lectures, then I don't want to begin with it. This one is on clauses and structures and other thing, right? Has anyone got the chance to at least sift through the contents? Not like watch them in detail, but at least look at what those contents are. No, absolutely nothing. Is Muskan, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We have gone through the lectures very quickly.
Of week two?
Yes.
Okay, so anybody else who has, okay, with just one person also it would be tougher because if you haven't watched the lectures, I cannot take it up. But all right, now in case not many people have seen it. So Lijish, you said you have gone through, no? So is there anything that you find particularly difficult? I'm not going to take up those contents today because I don't think it would be fair to do that since you haven't watched the lectures. We should have at least 50% of the crowd which has done that. Otherwise, this will turn into a lecture, which is not what is intended of this. How do you find those contents, Lijish?
Yeah, it's very easy to understand.
What is it that you have? How many have you covered? Have you covered all the lectures from
Yes, I have covered all the topics.
week two?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so your
I
understanding.
haven't done the activity questions, but
No, that's okay. That you can take your own time. There's still time for all that. I am talking particularly with respect to the content part. So clauses and clause structure, right? Isn't that the one?
Yes.
Right. So were you able to follow the lectures properly?
Yes. Yes, I'm able to.
Lijish?
Yes, the lectures are easy to follow.
Okay, so you did not find a problem with it.
No, no problem.
Okay, so anybody else who has gone through the contents, Muskan and all, tell me no, that they haven't absolutely watched any of this. We have more people joining in, so I'm again going to ask the same question. Were you able to look at the week two contents? If you don't want to speak, you can just give a thumbs up also. If yes, then thumbs up, else it's okay. How many of you have been able to go through the week two contents? Okay, Harsh says yes. Lijesh has already said he's gone through. Others? Harsha and Pavan. Pavan, you too? Okay. Ravi says no. Vijay, how about you? Yes. Okay. Oh, it looks like a few of them have looked at it. No. Harsha says no. Okay. We'll do one thing. We'll begin this. In case you find difficulty in understanding, for people who haven't watched, please do watch it. Otherwise, it's going to be tougher for you. So keep this in mind. Every time you come to this session, it is recommended that you watch these video lectures. Else, you may not be able to keep up with what happens in the class, right? Because we are mostly going to be practicing. We'll be clearing off doubts that are specific to the questions that we discuss, but we're not going to like do like an overall lecture reading or anything, because we simply don't have the time to do that. Usually a 1 hour or a 1.15 minutes session this is. So just ensure that you at least quickly run through the videos to know what the contents are. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with the questions with you. But before we look at the questions, can we quickly have an understanding of certain concepts? You guys are going to tell me. And if you have problems, I'm going to clarify those doubts. Do you understand? I'm going to say a few things and let me know if you understand all of them clearly, right? Do you understand the meaning of phrases like independent clause, subordinate clause, compound sentence, complex sentence? Yes, no? Independent clause? You clear with the idea of what an independent clause is? Okay, so this is not for people who haven't watched. Okay, at least for the ones who have watched, you must let me know. If you haven't gone through the videos, obviously you will not get it. But if you have done English 1, I think you should have some sort of understanding. There was, I think, the fag end of the English 1 syllabus was about clauses. Okay, so very few people say, all these people who said yes, are you okay with this idea? Lijish and all, independent clause. Sorry. Dependent clause, all of this. You're all able to still hear me, right? Because I just got a message saying your internet connection is unstable. Am I audible still?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so to begin with, you need to be very, very thorough with the concept of what independent clause and dependent clause means. Dependent clauses are also referred to as subordinate clauses. And if you have, or if you haven't, when you go through the lectures, you will see constant reference to this word called clause. So you should know what a clause means. You should know what a clause structure is. You should understand what are the various types of clauses. Okay, all these basic concepts are necessary to finally do the questions which are mostly to identify the kind of subordinate clause, okay, or identify the number of clauses in the sentence. So for that, you need to first know what a clause is and how the clause structure looks like. So anybody who can tell me what a clause is, what do you understand by the word clause? No?
Maybe a group of words or phrases containing subject and predicate.
Group of words containing, a little louder would be nice.
A group of words containing a subject and a predicate.
Okay, group of words containing a subject and a predicate. Yes, that is more of a structural explanation, which is also nice. I mean, it's good to understand what the structure of a clause is. But remember, anybody asks you what a clause is, the first thing that should come to you is that these are elements in a sentence. Sometimes a sentence itself is referred to as a clause. But mostly when you talk about clauses, what we mean is these are various segments that make up a sentence. Okay, so that is the general understanding of what a clause is. Okay, this is more important, or this is more structurally stable than the phrase, because a phrase usually doesn't have a subject and a predicate, like Litish was saying, right? It is just a group of words. It could either be a prepositional phrase or a noun phrase or an adjective phrase, which on its own cannot do anything, cannot perform any function. Clauses, however, sometimes they can stand on their own. And those kind of clauses are referred to as independent clauses, which means they have a subject and a predicate of their own, and they can make complete sense on its own by itself, right? So, which is why they're called independent clauses. There can be clauses with a verb, predicate, subject, and everything, and yet be unable to stand on its own. It would need other elements, or say the help of an independent clause to to make sense, right? And those kind of clauses are referred to as dependent clauses or subordinate clauses. Okay. Hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
But just give me a moment, okay? I think there's something wrong in this slide. Just 2 minutes. Okay, right. Yeah, so that is what and subordinate clause are, right? Both of them clauses, but one and both of them structurally have subject and predicate as a part of their structure. However, one is dependent on the other. Mostly the subordinate clause is dependent on the independent clause to make full sense. Why is an independent clause is called so? Because it can exist on its own, it can give its own, have its own meaning without dependency on anything else, right? This is the most basic understanding of what clause, independent clause and subordinate clauses. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so see, for this class, once in a while you have to okay, because this is a session, so this is interactive. So say yes or no, or at least give a thumbs up or something so that I can move forward. Okay. All right. Now, connected with this is another concept called the compound sentence and the complex sentence, right? Now, because we have looked at independent and dependent clauses, we understand what they are. What is a compound sentence? What's a compound sentence? Compound sentence is a kind of sentence which has at least two independent clauses. Okay. If you have at least two independent clauses in a sentence, joined or connected together using a conjunction, then you refer to that sentence as a compound sentence, right? But in the case of a complex sentence, what happens? There is at least one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. So you can have more than one dependent clauses in the complex sentences, but at least one has to be there. One independent and one subordinate at least has to be there in a sentence to make it a complex sentence. Okay. This is again the basic understanding. Is that clear as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
If you understand that part, okay, thank you. And if you understand that part, then the next thing that has to come into place, when you have a subordinate clause, these subordinate clauses, they can structurally function as various word classes, like mostly nouns, adjectives, adverbs. Okay, mostly nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. When they are present in a sentence, in the larger sentence, subordinate clauses can sometimes take up functions of the noun, adjective, or an adverb. Okay, so your part with respect to understanding of the structure and sentences in English, as well as your exam point of view, this is going to be very, very important. How do you identify, or how well you can identify the functional part of the subordinate clauses involved in the sentence? Identification itself may not be a tough task to see which one is a subordinate clause, but what function it performs can sometimes be a little tricky. Okay. So that is what one needs to keep in mind. And our exercise today in the class is mostly going to be based on that. Okay. I saw someone's hand up, but now it's lowered. Let me check.
Ma'am, there is some black
Suvanjan
screen.
Das, was it you? Sorry?
Yes, ma'am. There is some black screen on the on the Word document, so we cannot see it properly.
Blank screen, really?
Yeah, the point where your mouse is there actually in that.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll re-share it. I'll stop it and then share again. Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
It's visible now.
Sorry? Now visible, no, to everybody?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
all
ma'am.
right. So this is the basic thing. Okay, unless you're asking a question, make sure that your audio is muted. Please do not disturb the class. Right. So this is one, a few things that I would like to discuss with you with respect to the lectures that you have. Of course, the details of all this you will find in the lecture. We'll not go through that in the session. We'll directly start solving the questions, right? So the first question that you see here, this is straight away on types of subordinate clauses. And in each of the following sentences, underline and identify the subordinate clauses. So you just are going to identify here. We are not going to look at the functions, but that part will come to later. And just let me know which part do you think is the subordinate clause. The first one, everybody knows that he is an able instructor.
That he is an able instructor already marked.
It is marked, but can you tell me what position it occupies?
It occupies subordinate, means basically it is referring to the main clause. Because it is means it is explaining that
what position
who is everybody knows.
Okay, I repeat my question.
Means everybody knows what. Everybody knows what. We can replace that entire with what. That's why means I think it's.
Okay, and what is it called? That part. Everybody knows what. In the sentence, how do you identify that?
Subordinate clause.
No, you're not getting my question. I'm asking you what part of the sentence is that he is an able instructor answering.
Object.
Yes, correct. Okay. So that is the object position. Everybody knows that
it is
he is an able instructor.
It is a predicate.
The verb and the other part together. It's not just the predicate, it's the object position to be precise. Okay. That he is an able instructor is the object of the verb knows. Right. So this is also with respect to understanding what all positions can the subordinate clauses take up in a sentence. So you see that it can take up the object position of the verb for sure, right? Everybody knows him is one simple sentence that you have, but that him, which is the object to the verb knows, can also be replaced with a subordinate clause like that he is an able instructor, right? So object positions are very much used to write down subordinate clauses in English, right? And what kind of clause this would be? Everybody knows that he's an able instructor. That he's an able instructor would be what kind of a clause? Is it a noun clause?
Noun clause.
Adverbial clause?
Noun clause.
Noun clause. Okay. So if it is taking up the object position, we know objects and subjects are usually nouns or pronouns, right? So if a clause is taking up those positions, then obviously it has to be a noun clause. Nothing else can take up the subject and the object position. Since they are nouns or pronouns, if it is instead occupied by a subordinate clause, even that clause will have to function as a noun clause. Get this? Okay. So that he's an able instructor is your noun clause. Now, he saw the trouble that wrong companionship can cause. Again, the clause is already given to you. But tell me what kind of clause and why do you think so? Okay. How did you identify it? He saw the trouble that wrong companionship can cause. No?
Adjectival.
Adjectival, and what is it?
The subordinate clause.
How do you know that it's adjectival?
It explains the object noun. Trouble.
Trouble. Adds more information about it. Okay, so this is the thing. Understanding adjectival clauses, and then there is another clause called the appositive clauses. The major difference between both of them would be that adjectival clauses are usually modifiers, which means it adds additional information. However, appositive clauses don't do that. You can replace the whole object noun with the appositive clause. If replacement is possible, then it is an appositive clause. But if the clause given or the clause that follows the noun is more like a more like something that adds additional information, then it has to be adjectival clause. Okay, a lot of confusion happens between these two. So the way you identify is the replacement technique. If you can replace the whole clause with the noun that goes before it, then it has to be an appositive clause. Okay, but if it is more like something that explains the given noun or modifies or adds additional information about the person, thing, or situation, then it's an adjectival clause. So this answer is right, adjectival clause, and that wrong companionship can cause, explains, or adds further information to the noun trouble. Okay. Third one, just thinking about the final round put him in a competitive mood. Just thinking about the final round put him in a competitive mood. Again, the sentence has subject, verb, object, right? So put is your verb here. Him is your object here. In a competitive mode is an object complement. Just thinking about the final round is needless to mention your subordinate clause. What kind of clause is this? Try answering. If you cannot unmute, you can at least send your answers in chat. What clause? What kind of clause? Noun clause, right? Yeah. Noun clause, because it takes up the subject position. Again, as I told you before, subject and objects usually are nouns and pronouns. So anything that takes up its position has to perform the function of the noun, right? So just thinking about the final round is a noun clause, noun subordinate clause. But there is one more thing that you need to keep in mind with respect to types of clauses. What is the nature of this clause that you see here? Is it a finite clause or is it a non-finite clause? Just thinking about the final round, compare it with the previous one, like that wrong companionship can cause, or that he's an able instructor. What difference do you see in the first two and the third one? If at all there's a difference, do you see any, or do you think they're the same? And if you see a difference, what is it?
Ma'am, what is the question? First two and the third one.
Yeah, first two and the third one. Compare these two, three of the clauses, the first two and the third particularly, and let me know if there is a difference. Because see, if you look at the first one, that acts as a noun clause. Third one is also a noun clause, right? But there is some difference between both of them. What is it?
It takes two different positions, I think.
It takes two different positions, of course, structurally, but otherwise. Do you see that the first one is a finite clause? And what do we mean by finite clause? Do you know that?
It is a self-explanatory clause. It can have a meaning without the main clause also.
No. Both of them are subordinate clauses. They cannot have full meanings without the
verb form matters. Means verb form matters in this one. Means I guess.
What matters? What form matters?
Like here in general, everybody knows here there is an S. So means it is means different type of, it shows a tense, right? It shows a tense, but in just thinking about the final round, it doesn't shows any specific tense about verb.
So finiteness comes mostly from the tense. Okay. If your clause is verbless, okay, or if your clause is tenseless, if there is no tense applied by the verb, or there is no verb itself sometimes, then your clause is a non. Both of them are noun clauses in the case of the first sentence and the third one. Both of them are noun clauses. Difference is that the first one is a finite clause since it has tense. The verb has tense with it. Whereas in the third one, just thinking about the final round is a tenseless clause, right? So it's non-finite. Anything that comes without tense has to be non-finite, right? So this is again one type that you need to keep in mind when you talk about clauses. Of course, the functional part is important about noun, adverb or adjective, but knowing the finiteness of the clause is also important, okay? Right, now the fourth one, dressed in street clothes, Sumona and friends strolled in the garden. What's the subordinate clause?
Dressed in street clothes.
Dressed in street clothes. Muskan, yes, you're right, Muskan. You're also right. And what sort of clause is this? Dressed in street clause?
I can't see the entire question.
Sorry?
There's a black box in the. And now I can see it. So it's a noun clause.
It is a noun clause, correct?
Because it is means.
And is it a finite clause or an infinite clause?
Ma'am, it is an
finite or infinite, guys in the chat. Oh, Muskan, is it finite? It's a non-finite clause. Okay, so see.
It's a non-finite.
Both the third sentence and the fourth sentence has a non-finite clause. The thinking that you see there, it's not, do not take it for tense, it is not. These are both examples, third and fourth, both have examples of what we refer to as participles in English, right? Fourth is the example, the dressed that you see here is a participle phrase, the ed participle phrase. And the third sentence is an ing participle phrase. And just etch this into your mind, participles in English cannot provide tense. So the moment you see the ing ed participle in a sentence, you should know that this is a non-finite clause. Okay. Okay, but this is a noun clause by distinction of function. And by type, this is a non-finite clause. Okay, dressed in street clothes, that particular subordinate clause. Rest of you, those of you hearing, are you able to follow? Some of you are not responding, but I hope at least you understand what is being said.
Ma'am, I am having a hard time understanding this, the functions part. I can find the subordinate clauses, but function part means is it a nominal, it is an adverbial or adjectival clause. So I am having a hard time understanding that.
Do you have difficulty in understanding that?
Yes, ma'am. So means like if we can replace something, means how I do it, like if I can replace it with a noun, then yes. If I can replace it with a noun, then it's a nominal. If I can replace it as from a verb.
Verbs are usually not replaceable. You know, you can't do anything with respect to that. You can modify around verb for tense and other things, but you don't change the part including verb in a sentence. What will you do if you change the verb? The only thing that you can put in more elements and additional features to is the subject or the object position. Sometimes it is one word, sometimes it is a phrase, sometimes it is a clause. So in identification, particularly with respect to noun clauses, at least you need to focus on the structure of your sentence. If it takes up the subject or the object position, then there is no doubt it is a noun clause. You don't even have to bother about what it is, right? If it takes up the object complement position or the subject complement position or acts as the subject or the object itself, then it is definitely the noun phrase. But for adjectival phrases, it usually, in terms of position, it follows immediately after the noun that it is modifying, right? So look for the positions carefully in a sentence. And then to a large extent, you can identify the subordinate clauses and the kind of subordinate clauses that is used. Okay. That is one part. And of course, then you'll have to look at the function also. Take up the subordinate clause and see what it is doing. Where is it positioned and is it acting as an adjective? Is it adding more information or is it, something that you can replace with the other? Replacement is usually something that works with nouns. Like I told about appositive clauses also. If it is, something that refers directly to a noun, then ideally you can replace it with the noun that is in question. But if it is adding more information, then you cannot replace. No, it is more additive in nature. Then it is an adjective because it modifies your given noun. Okay. So practice more with this, and of course it comes only through practice. So look at more when you're reading things from now onwards, separate them out into sentences and see what kind of usage they have, because this complex sentence subordinate clauses is like a very, very common thing in mostly in any language, not just English. It is mostly the complex sentences that we use, that they are more in use than any other kind of sentences, whether simple or compound. Complex is the most commonly used one. So wouldn't be tough for you to find a few examples to work on. Okay, Purnindu, try to work on that.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. The sixth one is learning a foreign language is no easy task. So this part, right? And then you have the verb, and then you have no easy task. What is it? Learning a foreign language is what in the sentence structurally it is taking up which position?
Subject position.
Subject position, right? So obviously, if it comes in the subject position, then what kind of clause it has to?
Noun clause.
Noun clause, right? Noun clause. And finite or non-finite clause, learning a foreign language?
Non-finite.
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 Non-finite, okay? Don't be confused by the ing. This is used as a gerund. So again, participle use, not the tenseful use. Seventh one, the only problem in work is to relate work to people's needs. What position? The only problem in work is, yes, correct, object, right? So to relate work to people's needs, that whole clause is in the object position. So what kind of clause this would be?
Noun, because it's
noun
an
clause.
object position.
Correct. Object position, so noun clause. Now, finite, non-finite?
Ma'am, but it doesn't it gives information about work also?
Yes. Go ahead.
Doesn't this seventh line give information about work also? Means work means relate to works to people need. Doesn't it modifies the work?
Where does it
Doesn't it give
modify?
information about work?
See, keep in mind, if anything modifies, then it has to structurally immediately follow it. It cannot be placed elsewhere. You have this whole case of writing referred to as dangling modifiers or misplaced modifiers. In English language, at least, it's a structurally wrong method to displace your modifier from what is being modified. And to relate work to people's needs, how is it modifying work? It does not say anything directly about the work, right?
We
If
should
it
work
was-
according to people's need means
No.
work should be according to people's needs.
Okay,
So I
one thing
thought that
in grammar, do not go for, don't overread things, right? You look at only the structure and the position when it comes to deciding upon the grammar. We don't go into meanings and other parts, right? Syntax has to be maintained based on how you arrange your or your structure, which is otherwise called structuring, right? Don't bring in details from other part. We only look at the positioning and then decide how it works. In this case, it does not. So the only problem in work is, this is a clear case of having a subject, a verb, and an object.
okay.
Right? Because is here is not attributive. It's not like, if it is a case of an attributive adjective, then you can understand. This is a proper subject verb object construction. You don't have anything else. Only problem in work, that is your subject, is your verb, and then comes your object to relate work to people's needs. Okay, so try to replace it, no? To relate work to people's needs with one word, what can you replace it with? The only problem in work is
You have to work according to people's
no,
needs.
just one word. Say I say overtime. The only problem in work is overtime. Then this confusion
We can
doesn't
relate it,
arise
means we
because
can
it's
change.
just one word.
Mhm.
The problem
Yes.
comes in because of the clausal presence. But because you're able to replace it again, what did I say? If you're able to replace, then obviously this is a case of
It's a nominal
noun.
clause.
It's a nominal clause. So to relate work to people's needs is your noun clause, but finite or infinite? To relate work to people's needs, you have two twos here.
Infinite.
The first two is the part of the infinitive verb to relate, right? And the second two is a preposition. To relate is an infinitive. Infinitives are, as the name suggests, non-finite. So obviously this clause is a non-finite clause, right? To relate work to people's needs. Noun clause, but non-finite clause. Yes, correct, Suvanjan. It is infinite clause. Correct. Yeah. Okay, so 8.1, I believe that a hot, humid summer has benefited the hotel business. I believe. What part does it occupy in the sentence?
Object.
Object. So what kind of clause?
Nominal or noun clause.
Nominal clause. That a hot, humid summer has benefited the hotel business. Correct. So object position obviously has to be noun clause. Okay. Is this part understood? This part of identification is clearer, no, now? To people who are listening?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, next one. I listened to what his friends had to say. What kind of a verb is listen? Is it transitive or intransitive? Which means, does it need, do you think it needs an object?
No, ma'am.
I listened. You think I listened is like a...
Ma'am, I think it needs an object.
Ma'am, it needs
It needs an object. Because what does it mean? I listen to what?
No, you tell me. That's a question I'm asking you. Tell me from your
No, ma'am,
judgment if
it
listen
needs
is
an object.
transitive. Sorry?
It needs an object, I guess.
Which means you're saying it's a transitive verb, right?
Yes.
Yes. Anybody else who thinks it is intransitive? So listen is mostly used as an intransitive verb. Okay, because what are intransitive verbs? If it can make complete sense on its own, then you call it an intransitive verb, right? So when I say listen, or I listen, of course you can ask me what do you listen? That's a different thing, but it is complete. It's like sleep or walk or jump, right? If you have paid attention to the verb go, I think this might have sometimes come up in the forum too. You usually use go with a it needs a necessary additional adjunct with it to complete its meaning. However, go is considered as an intransitive verb. You understand fully what go means, right? By itself, it is complete, but in its usage, it most probably and most of the times requires a additional adjunct, right? Like I go home, or I go to school, or I go to college. But the verb in itself is intransitive. Same is the case with listen. Used as intransitive, but you will almost all the time find something additional along with it, like an adjunct to make things clearer, to make things more distinct, right? So why did I ask that? Because I listened to what his friend had to say. It is taking up the object position here. Although listen is, more like a intransitive one. Position is still of the object, whether it acts as an object or not. So you can say it is, in sentences which do not have object, you have something that you call as the adjunct, right? Isn't adjunct and complement also part of this week?
Yes, ma'am. Adjunct is
Right?
Yes,
Yeah, adjunct
ma'am.
and complements
Yes.
are also part of this, right? So this is more like an adjunct. I mean, you don't need it, but you put it because it gives you clearer distinctions, right? Or I mean, more information. So to what his friend had to say is taking up the object position, but not an object by itself. But since it
And
is
then-
taking up the object position,
And then when
what
we add
kind of-
additional information to an intransitive verb, then it is called an adjunct.
No, adjuncts are usually those non-required optional elements in the sentence. Like you see, look at sentence number 3. Not sentence 3, actually, that is an object complement. What can I take? Okay, if you have a sentence like, Neeta teaches English in Delhi. Okay, so if that is a sentence. So in Delhi acts here as an adjunct, because if you have the sentence Neeta teaches English, the sentence is complete by itself. It has the subject Neeta, teaches as the verb, and English as its object. This in Delhi is an additional information which is optional. I mean, I can do even without giving that information, right? So any such non-required optional elements in a sentence are referred to as adjuncts. And they are mostly, if you talk about the structure, they could be mostly adverbs or prepositional phrases, etc. Okay, get this? Those are adjuncts. In the sentence that we are discussing, I listened to what his friend had to say. Object position, but not an object. So adjunct also comes in that place. Adjuncts you can find in the subject and the object place. In our sentence, it has come up in the object part, okay, but not an object, which is why we'll call them adjuncts. Okay, is that clear what an adjunct is? Who asked? I did not really
Yes,
see.
ma'am, I got it.
Okay, all right. Complements, on the other hand, no, they are required elements. You cannot skip them. If you skip it in a sentence, then the sentence becomes ungrammatical. That is why they're called complements. Okay, so I listened to what his friend had to say. So although not an object, it's still in the object position, and we know that anything in the object position has to be what kind of clause?
Nominal.
What kind of clause in the object position?
Noun.
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 Noun. So I listened to what his friend had to say is a noun clause. I mean, to what his friend had to say is a noun clause, all right? Then, Sakshi, yes, you're, Tanu, Kumari, all of you are right, noun clause. Then you have the 11th one. Whoever said that does not understand the question. So, just a minute. Whoever said that does not understand the question. So your subordinate clause is whoever said that, right? And what position has it occupied?
Object.
Object.
Object, right? Whoever said that does not
Basically,
understand.
it is a nominal clause, I think.
Right, correct. So it's a nominal clause. Again, because it's in the subject position, you are going to use its function. I mean, its function is mostly like that of a noun. So nominal or noun clause. 12th, drugs that are used in chemotherapy damage a patient's healthy cells as well. Subordinate clause is already golden for you there, that are used in chemotherapy. Now, what kind of clause is this? Drugs that are used in chemotherapy. Somebody has answered in the adjectival, Vijay. Okay. Do others agree with it? Is that an adjectival clause that are used in chemotherapy?
Adjectival, ma'am.
It is adjectival, right? Now, how do you know that?
Ma'am, it is modified.
That particular phrase is modifying the subject noun drugs,
yes.
right? Okay. So drugs that are used in chemotherapy, not all drugs.
Ma'am, can you repeat?
So that are used in chemotherapy, this particular clause is modifying the subject noun drugs, right? Drugs that are used in chemotherapy, additional information, you're giving modification to it. Not all drugs, the drugs that are used in chemotherapy, you've given a modification to the given subject noun. So when these modifications happen to noun or noun phrases, then you look at the clause as something that is adjectival in function. Get this? Okay. Now come to 13th one. The doctors battled a deadly virus fueled by a lackadaisical public. Fueled by a lackadaisical public is your subject, your subordinate clause, right? And what is the nature? What function does it perform?
It is a noun clause, I think, because it is.
Okay, if it is a noun clause,
no. I think it is an adjectival clause because it is modifying the subject deadly virus.
Right. If you say so, that is right then. Okay. What is it? What is it modifying?
The deadly virus.
Virus, right? Mostly deadly virus fueled by a lackadaisical public. This is that particular phrase is a modification to the virus, okay, deadly virus or whatever, okay. But it directly modifies the object noun that goes before it, which is virus, right? Fueled by a lackadaisical public. So this is again an example of an adjectival clause. Is that clear to everyone? Any confusions?
Clear, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Now, the 14th one, scientists found no evidence to suggest that neutrinos have mass. Scientists found no evidence to suggest that neutrinos have mass. So, to suggest that neutrinos have mass is your subordinate clause. And what kind of clause is this?
What is
Noun clause?
Sorry, 1 second. Somebody is asking a question. What is it? Suvanjan, right?
Yeah, ma'am. What if we interpret this sentence like this, that scientists found no evidence to suggest, if we consider this as the main clause, and that neutrinos have mass, if we consider this as the subordinate clause, then that neutrinos have mass can be a noun clause, right?
But that is not how you look at it, no? Whenever you have to break down the sentence, you'll have to break them down into subject, verb, and object. What is the verb in this sentence?
To suggest.
To suggest cannot be.
No, actually, only the verb is the suggest. Yeah.
Please, one at a time, please. Yeah. What is the to suggest cannot be the verb, right?
No.
Read it again. What is your verb? Scientists found no evidence to suggest that neutrinos have mass. Isn't found your verb?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if you break, okay, I'll do this here. It's just that, my laptop is acting a little funny today. So this is your subject, right? Let me bolden it also, scientists. Then you have your verb here. To suggest cannot be the verb because see, to suggest is it is in its infinitive form. So any verb that does not have a tense cannot be the major supplier or the major verb in the sentence. It is mostly an infinitive verb, and infinitive verbs have very limited role to play in terms of the action word in the sentence, right? So to suggest is out of question. It cannot be the verb in the sentence. Your main verb is found. That is what is in past tense. It's tenseful and it is the main verb. It is also the state verb, not action verb, but still the main verb of the sentence, right? So found is your verb in the sentence. Get that part? Who was asking? Yes, Tanu, you are right. Okay, to suggest is not the verb, all right? Person who asked. So found is your main verb. So you have your subject, then the verb, and this part is your object. In the object, you have, what is this? If I take out this part to suggest that neutrinos have mass, I have the sentence, scientists found no evidence. Is that a good sentence? I mean, by good sentence, I mean, is that a grammatical sentence? Can I say scientists found no evidence?
No, that is not a complete sentence.
Why is it not a complete sentence? I have subject, I have verb, I have object. Why is it not complete? I will repeat what I told to Purnedu a few minutes ago. In grammar, obviously, see, one sentence cannot give you all the information in the world. No, you will have to definitely add other things to it. But if you just look at the sentence, the standalone sentence, scientists found no evidence. Our question, we are more concerned with whether the given sentence is grammatical or not. And to be grammatical, you know that the basic sentence structure we have is subject, verb, object. Object applicable if your verb is transitive. By that logic, is the sentence grammatical or not? Scientists found no evidence. Yes, right? It is right. I don't want to force this understanding onto you. I want you to see it yourself. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Now look at the rest of the part that you have. To suggest that neutrinos have mass. What is that particular part related to? Is it related to scientists?
No, I think it is related to evidence.
Right? Definitely not related to the verb also. Which part is it related to?
Evidence.
Evidence, right? What is evidence? It is in the object position. So structurally, what is it? It's a noun. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a noun. So to suggest that neutrinos have mass is acting more like a modifier or an additional information about this evidence, right? Something about the evidence. Neutrinos have no mass or whatever it has been said about the evidence, which is a noun. And so what is the nature then? If it is a modification to the noun, then what kind of
Adjectival clause.
adjective? That's all. Okay. So this is what I exactly meant in the beginning. Some of the sentences would be straightforward. It is easy to understand their adjectival. But sometimes, these infinitives and other constructions in English can interfere. They don't interfere per se, it's not the right word to use. They are very possible constructions. They're very, this is a perfectly possible grammatical sentence in English. But they are a little, they look like a little different sort of construction. So this can confuse you. So don't do that. To keep away from this problem, the first thing that you should do is, as and when you get a sentence, please say, break them down into subject, verb, object, because that is the very basic part of learning the grammar, right? The basic sentence elements. And then look at what each of the elements are, whether they are single words or phrases or clauses, and then come to your conclusion. So basic would be break them down into subject, verb, object. Okay, and then do your analysis further. You will not go wrong after that. Okay, so right. So this one then, to suggest that neutrinos have mass is an adjectival phrase. And like you see, because you have to suggest in there, that particular part To suggest, so what you were asking, no, I will talk to you about that. This part is your first subordinate clause, and this part will be your second subordinate clause. So you can have embedding also. That means there can be clause within clause. This is a case like that. To suggest that neutrinos have mass is your first clause. Within that you have that neutrinos have mass as your second clause. Okay, get this. So the first clause, to suggest that neutrinos have mass, is an infinite clause. It's a non-finite clause. Adjectival in function, but non-finite clause. But that neutrinos have mass is a finite clause within the larger.
Yes, ma'am. Now I get it.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can break open sentences like this, when embedding happens, you need to do this exercise. But since we were only discussing the kind of clauses, I thought it's unnecessary to mention it here. But since there was a confusion, just keep this in mind. You have two clauses within that. Okay, now the 15th and the 16th, this is the last two questions that we're going to do. And we'll continue doing this in the next class as well. We'll take up clauses again for the next session. This is a very important part in advanced English. Okay, having a good grasp on this is very, very important to especially write well in English. So 15th one, when a heart attack occurs, the electronic device automatically produces charges of electricity that jolt the heart back into a normal rhythm. All the subordinate clauses are already bolded there. Just let me look at it carefully. Tell me what kind of clauses they are.
The first one is noun clause.
Why is it a noun clause?
Is it an adverbial clause?
I just want to know from the person why the person thinks that it is noun clause. It is an adverbial clause. Yes, that's right. So don't blindly go behind the positioning. Okay, so nothing of this works like that. You need to look at the sentence properly. Just because it comes in the beginning of the sentence, subjects can occur anywhere. It's not necessary that subjects always come in the beginning. They can sometimes come at a later time also. Like for example, sentences that begin with a non-finite expression or that clauses, they can act as subjects within themselves, but in this case, it is not the case. Look at the sentence carefully. It is a subordinate clause. When a heart attack occurs, the independent clause here is the electronic device automatically produces charges of electricity, and then the subordinate clause attached with it, right? So when a heart attack occurs is a subordinate clause. It's not the subject. It is the nature of that clause is that of an adverb. Why? What's the function of an adverbial clause? It talks about.
Here it talks about the time when it is explaining the time when that moment it is explaining that.
Correct. So it qualifies either a verb or an adjective or another adverb and talks mostly about their location. Okay, like the place where it happens. So it can answer the question where, or the manner in which it occurs, or the degree to which it has occurred, or reason or purpose. All of them fall under the correct. It tells when the electronic device produces electricity. Correct. So mostly related to time, right? So in this case, when a heart attack occurs, since it gives you modifications or additional information about the time or how the action has happened, what time the action has happened, it's an adverbial clause. Okay, that's the first one. Second one is that jolt the heart back into a normal rhythm. What do you think that is? What's the nature?
Adjective.
Produces charges of electricity that jolt the heart back into normal rhythm. What is that subordinate clause talking about? Correct.
Charges of electricity.
Charges of electricity.
Electricity.
Somebody has answered adjectival, that's correct. So charges of electricity is the part that is being modified, right? So which is a noun, and hence anything that modifies a noun has to be an adjective. Therefore, that particular subordinate clause is adjectival in function. So first one, when a heart attack occurs, is adverbial, and the second one is adjectival. That jolted the heart back into a noun. Clear? Now, the 16th one, reflecting on the past 3 years, she wondered whether she could have made better decisions. Reflecting on the past 3 years, she wondered whether she could have made better decisions.
Yeah, the first one is an adverbial clause.
Correct. So it talks about how, right? How did she wonder? So how did the wondering part happen? Reflecting on the past 3 years, the manner or the the manner in which some action has progressed, right? So the first part, reflecting on the past 3 years, is your adverbial clause, and whether she could have made better decisions. What about that?
I think it's a noun clause.
Sorry.
I think it's a noun clause. The second one is a noun.
Noun clause. She wondered whether she could have made better decisions. Yes, because object position, right? So that particular part, the subordinate clause is the object of the verb wonder, and objects have to be what? Nominal in nature, hence nominal, right? All of you are right. Purnendu, Muskan.
Can you once
Noun clause or nominal clause. Sorry?
Can you once just brief me on the point of the nominal clause? I am not getting the concept.
What did you not understand about nominal clause? If you tell me exactly what it is, I can talk.
I mean, like we are segregating the clauses of 3 types: adverbial, adjectival, and noun clause.
Yes.
So then, what is the nominal clause about?
Nominal clause talks to you about the function of that subordinate clause.
Okay.
After you identify the subordinate clause, that clause usually performs some kind of function in the sentence. No, so if it functions like a noun, then it is a nominal clause or a noun clause. If it acts like an adjective, it's doing the function of an adjective, then an adjectival clause. And if of an adverb, then an adverbial clause.
Oh, then nominal clause is just another name for noun.
Yeah. Nominalization is actually the name that is, technically used to talk about anything that performs the function of a noun. So you either call it a noun clause or a nominal clause, same thing. Okay. Anything that involves pronoun and noun, that is called nominalization in technical terms in linguistics. But yeah, you can either call it a nominal clause or a noun clause. Means the same, no much difference. Okay, all right, everyone. So is this part understood?
Yes, ma'am, clear.
This is very important. Please keep practicing. Next week, again, we'll take up a few more questions on the clause part. And before we can close it and then take up other topics. So meanwhile, you also keep practicing. I will upload this sheet into your supplementary tab. Please find it there.
I have a question.
This sheet will have actually the questions that we have to discuss for the next class as well. But it's okay, you can go through. Only this part was underlined and kept. The rest of the part, it does not, like subordinate clause, the last part. So you can go through it before you come to the class next week. There's one additional question on compound sentences. Please try to do that as well. If you're good at it, no problem, still solve it. Look at that part as well. And if you have doubts, please ask me in the next class. Okay. Check for this materials. If they don't get uploaded on time, please write to the forum and intimate it to somebody so that it is done. Purne, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Basically, it is related to lecture. When I am seeing the lecture, there are certain specific ways in which you can identify things that sir tells about that. Like, for example, if we are using 2 nouns, then one should be dropped off. So these type of things are not present on the lecture slide. So if it will be present, then it will be helpful. because in continuation while learning, it just breaks the flow to means stop and write the notes.
Lectures are mostly for the purpose of description of the concept itself. Sessions will help you how to solve these things. So this distinction is made between both of this. If everything looks the same, then there is no point of having two sessions. No? Lectures will be conducted that way because the idea there is to introduce you to the concept and talk about it. So it's more descriptive in nature, which is why lectures are short like that. But I'm sure even the lectures will refer to a couple of things that I've said. I haven't said anything on my own. Most of them have been taken off from that.
Yes, yes. Means
Hello, ma'am.
basically, sir are saying some tips which are present in subtitles but not in the on the slide page. That's why. So if we want to refer later, we have to make the notes. And while making notes, I am just learning and means while I pause it and then I go back to the lecture, then the flow breaks down of the learning continuous process. That's why I'm
Don't worry
saying.
about it. It's all part of note making. That's usually how you do note making.
Hello, ma'am.
Huh.
Yeah, this is Ketan Patil
Okay.
here. Is this lecture, Miss Session 1, available on and supplementary contents?
The lecture itself?
No, this today what you have displayed is actually I
This one.
joined
It's not
really late.
uploaded yet. Once the
Yeah. Means it is available
session
na,
gets over,
afterwards.
we do
Means
upload
tomorrow
all this.
onwards.
It will be available. Yeah, it will be.
Okay.
It will be. Okay. All right. So thank you for joining in. I'll meet you next week again. Meanwhile,
Thank you,
please.
ma'am.
Okay.
Sure,
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, no problem. See
Thank
you.
you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much, and we'll meet you next.
Yes, ma'am.
Session will be available. You can find all the links to this, the YouTube links. It will be updated there, so you can find the sessions there as well. Okay.